that go by.
I think it's a very useful
He set it up.
interruption, if you want to call it that. If you want to give me a 5-minute break, I can get that set up and we can start from the beginning again if you want.
No. If
No,
you
that's
have
all right.
for presentations,
Okay.
we'll use that.
So I am a designer by training, a long career with S&S and then with Lang in Design up here in Newport doing the same thing. And in my role in the handicap offices, I've been designing boats for the last 20 years as well. This is what I do for fun. You guys might go sailing. Some of you might even and play golf. I sit at my computer and I love using my software to create boat shapes. I've got some old S&S designs in the queue. And my next phase in life, I actually want to build wooden models of them. But whatever, I find this fascinating. So what we end up with is a whole shape. It's got the right profile. It's got the beam. It's got the displacement. It's got the draft. It's very close on wetted area. It certainly has the right keel wetted area because we get the scans of what that looks like. So for our purposes for OREZ, we have what I would call an offsets file that is certainly good enough for what we're doing. Then we can find rig geometry. It's on the PHRF certificates. It's also on sailboatdata.com. We look at the two of them and make sure we're putting in the right things. On an easy application, the owners are supposed to type in IJPE and other things, and we ask them to get sales. So what's missing out of all this that I'd like to do a better job on is the stability of the boat. That is a free agent. A number of us have tried to come up with a formula for stability based on the length of the boat, the beam, the weight of the boat, maybe the draft, whatever. I've done a lot of work in that area, and unless you know how much ballast there is, unless you know how many Corian countertops there are, or water makers, or all the other things that are options inside of a boat, it's very difficult to predict that. Sure, the modern offshore racer, it's very easy because they've got a heavy bulb at the bottom of the keel and you know the interior of the boat is stripped out. So it's pretty easy to come up with that. It's a lot harder on a design like an ensign or something else. I mean, you can come up with reasonable expectations of what it might be or estimates. But other than that, I think the VPP model for new boats is fairly good. There are times when we don't really get much information at all. And then I think we have to carefully note internally that we don't have a lot of confidence in this particular design. So we do what we can, and then we try to observe the performance of the boat, which brings up the other aspect of EZ. Having done VPPs since the early 1980s, I was hired to help S&S. It was the first time we lost the America's Cup, but that's not on me. It was 1983, and we lost to the guys down in Australia. But I'm well aware of what VPPs can do and cannot do. And there are a lot of boats, just like any measurement rule, a lot of boats are not going to fit into a measurement rule because there are compromises. There might be very good cruising boats and lovely boats to sail, but as an example, there might be bad helm balance. There might be leeward helm, and you got the rudder lifting the wrong way, and which means the keel has to do more than it's supposed to do, and there's a drag price for that. There are odd shapes of boats that create extra drag. There are some designs that are simply better than other designs. So within EZ, because we're targeting it towards PHRF, towards boats that are what they are, the sailors come with the boats as they are and expect to get fair treatment. We reserve the right to make a subjective adjustment to a boat's rating or an observed adjustment. So we try to limit this because if EZ becomes perf, we've lost the whole reason for being EZ. And we're just opening ourselves up to constant listening to suggestions or recommendations or complaints about ratings. And the rule can't afford to go that way. But at the same time, we recognize that if we're going to be a home for every boat that's out there, we need to recognize those things that the VPP does not do well. I'll give you a counter example. There are boats that achieve far greater percentage of their inherent performance than others do. This happens with the Hot One design classes. And why? Because the professionals get on board, really good racers get on board. They start tuning the rigs. They find the best sails that give the best performance for those boats, and everything elevates, and they get those boats operating at a much higher performance level than the rest of us do when we go sailing. So your hot classes, which can be, J70s or whatever, historically, and I've noticed this for many years working in the offshore office, PHRF gives them ratings based on what they see. When we put those boats through a VPP, we predict them slower than they are. I used to do this at US Sailing a lot in my previous tenure there, and we would find that the Hot One design boats beat the VPP, and Perf recognizes that, and the other boats are generally well treated. So this is another factor that goes into the human side of making sure racing works. So what we do is when we get a new boat, if we do a build-a-boat or whatever, even if it's not a build-a-boat, if it's the first time that design has been brought into ORREZ, we do a check of PHRF ratings just because it's informative. And we want to know if there's going to be a big difference. If there is a big difference, we're going to have an issue with the owner of that boat or the fleet or whatever. And it may be that the perf rating is wrong, or it may be that the VPP is assuming things that are not there. So if there's a discrepancy larger than 6 seconds a mile, we will have a discussion. If it's less than that, we think it's down in the noise. Now I realize 3 and 6 seconds a mile means a lot to people, but when I compare rules versus rules, differences in opinion between the rules to 3 to seconds is the norm. You'll almost never get something less than that. So we will have a discussion, and historically that discussion has been a group within ORA and hopefully someone from the local fleet. If it was a former PHRF fleet, we try to have someone that was on that PHRF committee or an independent observer serve as a touchstone for us. Do you think this boat was being given a sweetheart rating from the golf purpose or a golf handicap thing? Or is it because there's not enough information about that boat elsewhere for us to differentiate between the crew and the boat itself? So the other thing we do is we go into US Sailing's National Archive, which we call the Red, White, and Blue Book, to see if other areas have handicapped the same boat. Then we're looking for what the variation is in handicaps from region to region. Let's call it the Jeremiah 35, okay? Oh, well, it's out in Seattle, and it's in New England, it's in Southern California, it's in the Gulf. And everyone agrees on what the rating is, pretty much, all the perf regions. And we look at how many boats they've rated and the last time they did it, as well as what their confidence level is. All that's in that Red, White, and Blue book. And from that, we decide what we think a realistic PHRF rating is, and how does that compare with what we're producing. Let me back up. What we are producing is what I found in general to be the best way to correlate VPP output with PHRF. I've compared ORR windward-leeward with PHRF, and all right, to get a correlation that's about this good. If I do what's called GPH, which is sailing in a circle and medium wind speeds, which means equal distances at all wind angles, maybe we get a slightly better correlation. I found a mix of the two was better still, because PHRF, as I would intuit it, is not all windward-leeward, so it's not all sailing in a circle, it's something of a mix. What we ultimately ended up was 1/3 VMG upwind, 1/3 VMG downwind, and 1/3 reaching divided into 60, 90, and 120 true wind angles. So on an EZ certificate, that's what's called the IR pound number. On top of that, we calculated this for several wind speeds and then blended them together. So it's a mix of upwind reaching and downwind and medium light to medium heavy wind speeds. We felt this was the best way to correlate against PHRF. So we look at that number and we subtract the far 40s number from that to come up with a quasi PHRF rating. And that's what we compare against the local perf rating as well as the national ones we see in the red, white, and blue book. So if it's over 6 seconds a mile, the differential, we're going to have a discussion. If it's much greater than that, we are absolutely going to make an adjustment. But we never go all the way to what perf says if there's a huge difference. Huge is going to be like 20 seconds or more. Because we don't want to totally put our eggs in the perf belief basket or the VPP belief basket. So our protocol is to go halfway in between. And then we'll review the race results. We will get more information. So if we think the boat has some features that are not properly captured by the VPP, or if we don't trust the scheme, the build-a-boat scheme for this particular boat, which is another uncertainty, then we can slowly converge on a rating that makes sense. Now, this does sound PHRF-like, and it does get people together using their best judgment based on observation. But we try to limit this to historically about 10% of the fleet, but not more than that. But we do it not based on percentages, but on what we think a boat needs in order to be fairly handicapped. So let me stop there and you can ask questions or whatever.
I have a question if you can, I don't know if my audio is very good here.
Yeah, you're good.
Fine.
Okay, the red, white, and blue book, the last time I looked at it, it was pretty much out of date. And I don't know if there's electronic copy. Well, even what you can find online, it still shows a lot of ratings that haven't been current since like 2016, 2018, somewhere around there. And I guess where there are fleets that are active for active boats in that class elsewhere, but it appears that maybe the PHRF areas aren't reporting into the red, white, and blue book.
That's true. There's an online version, and fleets that are members of U.S. Sailing have the ability to go in and update their ratings or add some more boats in. They even can send in a request for new designs to be put in, and then they go to the head of our PHRF committee, which is a volunteer one, to see if we should add those classes in. Having said that, that capability exists. It is my responsibility and my task to get the message out, to revitalize that, to get more perf fleets participating in that. And I also want to create a database, which will start out as a spreadsheet where we agree on what the standards are for each design. So IJPE, rough perpendicular, sure, draft, because there are different keels out there. Displacement and beam are going to be fairly standard, but and if we get organizations to submit what they think the pre-HRF rating is for that design in that standard configuration, I'd like to see a team come together and come up with a national recommended rating for that. It's only a recommendation, but it's kind of a best estimate of what that would be. Now, the concept of national rating implies the same course and wind speed throughout, and different areas have different conditions. So I don't think we would ever expect, other than maybe some reference boat, San Francisco Bay to have the same ratings for boats that the Gulf does, because they sail 12, 16, 20, 25 knots of wind on a regular basis.
Yeah. If you look on the PHRF websites, the local ones, they're pretty much local. Some people share the same spreadsheet, but just about everybody has a spreadsheet with, most of the particulars. So, but I don't find that those ratings are reflected in the red, white, and blue book. And I assume it's because they're not updating them.
Right. So that's on our plate at U.S. Sailing to do that. I'm surprised you were expressing frustration with ones that were 2016 and 17. I see a lot that are 2000, 2003, 2005,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
so we can agree with, we've got a problem.
I agree. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was given some, I was trying to be nice, so.
Yeah.
Okay. You can go on our website and select all and click on create a report
Yeah,
and wait 5 minutes and then download everything that's up there through 2000, well, February of 2025. Having said that, it's not going to have, there are not a lot of new boats that have been put in there or updated ratings. We need to get more fleet participation in the process.
yeah,
But the last one we printed as a PDF was 2017. I created my own 2 years ago, which is 2022, and I can create another one. We need to update what's available for download on our site. Because although we're talking about a VPP rule right here, I and US Sailing are a strong supporter of PHRF as an entry level rule.
yeah,
And we don't think it's going away. We don't think it should go away. We
yeah,
just think it needs to be helped.
yeah. I didn't mean to take you off topic. I was just, that database, that was on my only comment, but I understand that you want to use that to review how that compares to the VPP ratings.
It's a sanity check. I
Yeah.
mean, who knows? I may have made an error somewhere if I was doing a build a boat,
Mhm.
or maybe there are some real outliers in how a boat's being rated in one place versus another. So I think this, I like to think there's no excuse for a bad rating. It's just someone didn't do their homework. So we're trying to cover everything on our basis on doing this.
I think that like that was interesting that you said that what you said about PHRF and the need for it to still remain in place. And I think that's what New Orleans Yacht Club has kind of settled on. They don't have it's easier to run a single number rating system. And so they've adopted the EZ, but they're applying the single number rating that comes with that certificate. That way they can keep it makes it easier for the race committee. It makes it easier to score. It can maximize participation, but then because they still have that easy certificate, they can play with all the other yacht clubs as well. And so they've got a strong turnout every Wednesday because it is so simple to get involved and it's simple to digest. I'm a new sailor, and that single number makes it easy to know where you stand against other boats, and you don't have to wait until the end of the class. So it's interesting to hear that that you're advocating for PHRF to still remain in play and still how it interacts with EZ.
Well, I'm really glad you said that, because I make a point of that whenever I give an easy participation. So let me go back to an anecdote. In the mid 1990s, this was IMS rule. Oh, hang on, I got to plug in my computer. The battery's low. Okay. So a guy named Alan McElhenney, a really smart mathematician, put together a scoring system. I won't go into the details, called performance curve scoring. The idea was that, boats' relative ratings vary with wind speed, and race committees don't like to pick a wind speed with a multiple rating system. He developed a system that does that automatically, just looking at elapsed times and figuring out, hey, it must have had this much wind, so we'll use this wind for scoring. And it led to more accurate scoring. Well, in the mid 1990s, he came to one of our IMS meetings and said, I know we're pursuing perfection here with scoring and measuring and the VPP and all. He said, I don't think that's the right thing to do, because in the end, we're going to have the best sailed boat winning every race. And that's going to screw participation. He said, there's something to be said for having every dog has his day, that you come to a race a given day and you've got an advantage over everyone. And let's just pretend I'm me, mediocre sailor, and Bob is beating me every race, but I know my heavy boat and heavy air does really well. So if I come out and it's blowing 20, I've got a chance to beat Bob Kotler or Paul Kayard or Augie Diaz or somebody like that. So having some luck like that keeps me coming out because I know I'm not at their rank of a sailor, but I can have some fun because maybe I can beat them on a good day that suits my boat. So you're absolutely right. In fact, I would say participation is the primary metric of success.
Yep.
It's not how close the corrected times are, which is a good technical one, but do people want to come out? Over the source of a season, probably the best sailed boat's going to win that season trophy. But throughout the season, you have more people having fun, winning trophies. You're spreading the joy. So I think that attitude is really appropriate for one level of racing. There are other people that want something else. They want more technical precision. And at the high end, they want the best sailed boat to always win. So I think it's incumbent on us to provide solutions for the different kinds of sailors and the different levels of expectations of what they're getting. So I'm just trying to reinforce what you just said.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, Ben.
Hi, Jim. Hi. Sorry, I just found out about the meeting, and then I had to let it Zoom. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
You could tilt your camera down a little bit.
Here, we're looking up your nose.
There you go.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little rough. I've had a pretty rough year.
So we just went through what easy is and the build-a-boat process, as well as after every new design gets put into the system, how we use PHRF as a touchstone, as a sanity check. A, to see if we made a mistake, and B, to see if we might have identified a boat that the VPP does not handle well, or maybe the local area is giving someone a gift card, a sweetheart rating, any or and all of the above. But if there is a big difference, we know we're going to have a human issue to deal with. We better check and see what's going on. But we limit that to something on the order of 10% of designs so that we don't actually emulate PHRF where every rating is up for discussion. And that's about where we are
Gotcha.
in today's meeting.
This meeting specifically about this rating of the easterly.
No, but Ben's what I really want, what I asked Jim to do was just kind of clarify for everybody how boats get rated, because I know there was a lot of it was kind of a little bit of a mystery, I think, as to how we rated especially older boats that don't necessarily have very clear line drawings and those kind of things. So I don't know, Jim, do you want to talk a little bit about this came about a little bit after the Easterly 30. And I don't know if there's anything you want to talk about there at all.
I don't have the history of the Easterly in front of me, but I know it's been a difficult boat to handicap. We don't have the lines of the boat. I don't have a lot of confidence in the build-a-boat. I'd love to get the actual lines and then we have something to talk from.
Yeah. The interesting thing was, so I wanted the first boat, I told these guys the first boat I ever bought on my own was an Easterly 30. And I wanted to get a half hull to put up on the yacht club wall. And I called up the builder that was going to, the model builder that was doing all of our boats. And he said, well, just get me the line drawings. So I called Donnie, whose dad had built the boat. And Donnie said, oh yeah, the last time I saw line drawings, they were up on the wall of my dad's shop. And so that's what's interesting is, nobody hasn't, as far as the Brennan family knows, there actually weren't any line drawings that actually got written down anywhere other than the wall. And so that's an interesting one.
This is a case where that ORA committee gets together and looks at the perforating and the actual performance and the VPP output and makes a decision on how to get some middle ground between the two. And that middle ground will be a starting point. And then we could get more observation. The middle ground is just to protect us from someone who may have been sandbagging a boat, for instance, and we give them all the rating that the PHRF says, and they figure out how to sail the boat, and all of a sudden they're winning races. So whenever we do anything like that, we kind of have to be conservative to protect the fleet, so we don't give too much help. If we didn't give enough help, then it's up for review down the road.
How
Would-
often is that review process?
How often?
Yes.
That's a good question. We've been doing it on a yearly basis, and if it's a review of something that's already been rated, we've always been waiting for someone to come back to us. Now, Ket is pretty good, for instance, on coming back and saying, this is what I'm hearing in the trenches. We get some of that up in New England as well. So we respond to those things, and Ket and we are talking about formalizing a process by which a local authority can make a request for a rating review. So my own feeling on this, and I don't get to decide this, is that if a particular sailor is unhappy with his rating, he ought to go to the local authority, whatever that is, and talk to them. And if they agree with him, they can fill out some kind of a trivial form and send it up to ORA and ask for a review of this. And if they disagree with him, maybe we should do what USPHRF does. And there's an appeal process that an individual can make as well. In which case, we would also want to talk to the local race authorities, and it gets to be more of adjudicating a situation. But there needs to be a process by which you as local organizers can formally request a review of a rating.
And that form is, like you said, is a form or no?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
This is a
I
work
can
in
help, I
progress.
can help put that form together. I spent a lot of years on a PHRF, but we got to understand what PHRF is. It's an evaluation of down here, a very good evaluation of the way those individual boats performed. Nothing to do with, scientific potential of the boat. Whereas you're transferring velocity prediction into subjective views, right? You're trying to.
Yeah, there's another issue here that our PHRF rating, as I described to the group earlier, we come up with a seconds per mile prediction. It's 1/3 VMG upwind, 1/3 VMG downwind, and 1/3 reaching divided into 1/9 at 60, 1/9 at 90, and 1/9 at 120. We do that for several wind speeds and average them together. So we've got kind of a squishy number that covers a gamut of racing. It's not windward leeward. It's not sailing in a big circle, which is a lot of reaching. It's kind of a combination of those. And we get reasonably good correlation with PHRF when we do that. So to come up with a perf rating, we have this, what we call an IR hash mark or pound number. We subtract the number that the PHRF, that number is for the FAR 40. So IR pound FAR 40 subtracted from IR pound of your boat. And that comes up with an implied PHRF rating. But your PHRF ratings are what they are based on the weather that you sail in your area. It's the collective experience and wisdom of your handicapping group and the racing that you do. So the conditions may not map out at all to what we're providing with that description and that wind speed. So we always think it's really good to just go racing with the handicap on the EZ certificate that fits the conditions you have. So Jeremiah talked about his fleet using a single number off there. My guess is it's maybe a little bit lighter air than the average that's used. So you might be picking a rating that has a greater spread between boats because spreads the boat speeds through water spread out more when there's light wind. At least in seconds per mile it does. So we always encourage people to use the various handicaps as appropriate before we get too far into thinking maybe a rating is wrong. Let's just go racing and see what happens. And then if there's some issues, then let's come back and address them.
Jim, in this particular boat, just for an example, was brought on a Zoom meeting, I sort of missed the point. You have no line drawings of the boat. Well, those are available.
Okay.
You know, in other words, we know the builder. I mean, he had to have line drawings.
He doesn't, Benz. I talked to him. He doesn't have them. I talked to him. I talked to Donnie. He said the last line drawings they had were on the wall.
I'm going to go look in my files. I might have the line drawings.
Oh, if you do, that'd be great. I can get a half hole built. Yeah, I mean, yeah, Benz. I spent hours trying to find line drawings, and I forget. And then Andrew, you know, I talked to Andrew. He told me to call Donnie, and at the end of the day, I couldn't come up with any, and the family couldn't come up with any. If you have some, that'd be great.
Well, there's something else you could do.
It's based off the Gulf One. It's pretty, which again might be tough finding line drawings, but
Yeah.
Which one?
Gulf One.
The Gulf One, it was a 1940s, 50s.
Mid 50s, Dan. Yeah.
Oh, I don't remember that. Is it racing in your fleet?
No. Yeah.
I was going to say there is something else that we could do for the Easterly, and that's to try to find out what her inherent stability is. Now, you can fly a measurer in and pay $1,000, $1,500 to have them do this, but you can do it yourselves. And people do this relatively easily. We just need to tilt the boat to port and to starboard with a known weight at a known distance off center line to port and starboard, and see what the angle of heel variation is from one side to the other.
Yeah, I saw that image on the measurement chart of the boat with the blue water cans out on the spinnaker pole.
Yeah. So what you can do is get a bucket of water and put it in the bottom of the cockpit, fix your boom on center line, and hang a cord with a weight, and the weight is in the water, so it gets dampened on a string. So you got a string from the boom down to the bottom, and then I would, across the top of the bucket, transversely, I'd put a yardstick. So now you have a really good inclinometer. You can't be on the boat, of course. You might need some binoculars, and you're in a rubber dinghy looking at that string on the yardstick from off the transom of the boat. Then you can put 2 spinnaker poles, or if you don't have that, you can use some weights on the deck edge. You're just going to need some more weight. Spinnaker poles are better. You have to put them out port and starboard and fix them. But we need to know the exact amount of weight you're hanging from the spinnaker pole, and we need to know the exact distance from where the attachment point of the string or rope that's holding that weight is to the center of the boat. So it's that arm, that weight, put all the weight on one side and see where the string is on the yardstick and record that, put it all on the other side and see where the string now is shifted on the yardstick. And of course, we need to know the distance from the yardstick up to the boom, where the string comes from. So I'm sure you all remember high school geometry and trigonometry. We're going to do a little bit of a sine, cosine, tangent stuff to come up with what that angle is. So we know what the riding moment is because it's that weight times the arm. And we want to divide that by the number of degrees deflection we get from port to starboard. That is a direct input into the VPP. And then we would have some reasonable idea of what the inherent stability of the Easterly 30 or any other boat we do this on is. Because the VPP will take that and convert it to where the center of gravity of all the weights is in the boat, how high up it is. And then we use that for all of our performance predictions. I think it'd be a lot of fun to do that for you guys. I know I'd enjoy doing it.
I read about how
Fly
to
me
do
down,
it.
I'll help you.
Doug,
Doug,
Doug Dovey
Doug
did that
Dovey and Kat and myself did this on Zeta, the Extreme 25. Jim, I'm not sure how that data looked when you got it. But we went through the process at New Orleans Yacht Club and turned the boat around, and we did both sides and came up with the inclination for the boat. And we also measured freeboards, I think, too. Jim, is this not all done like back in the IOR days? Do we have access to like all these easterlies? That very easily was rated IOR.
Send me a certificate.
Find a certificate, huh? That I might have also, an old easterly certificate.
I have scanned, the office scanned all the IOR certificates and all the folders over all the decades. The problem is finding the boat in the scanned folders.
Okay, I might be able to help there. So yes, I got a lot of old IOR stuff in my office.
Well, there's an inclination experiment, just what I'm talking about, the same thing, done with high precision instruments, not a bucket of water and a yardstick. But yeah, if we can get that, that would help a lot.
Of course, we do come aware all these easterlies weren't built exactly the same. And there's been rumor, I don't know exactly the truth, but that very boat we're discussing here is the lightest of them. Which, some have added old boats, like I deal with ensigns all the time. Old boats change a lot over the years too. People put interiors rot out, all kinds of things.
Right. Well, the freeboards that you mentioned don't really help me. And if it's a build-a-boat, because I'm building a boat based on a drawing that I see that was from a brochure, and there's kind of a shear line. I don't know how much of that is maybe a little strip across of metal or wood across the top, and I can't correlate the shear on the real boat with the shear on an image with enough accuracy to have a lot of confidence in the displacement of the boat. Because my
I understand.
VPP model, my computer model of where the shear is not going to agree with the actual boat.
I understand.
Being off by a centimeter can be a huge difference in displacement.
Sure. Is the model used even have the chimes or, yeah.
What chimes? On the easterly?
Yeah, on the easterly. Like the sides of the boat go to under the water line, a sort of rounded square edge.
I could find the boat and pull it up.
Would any photographs of the boat out of the water be helpful in understanding the shape of the hull?
What's the name of the boat?
Koala.
Koala.
Koala?
K-O,
Yeah.
Yes, I have boats. What I see is not a chine, but it comes down and it's a hard turn at the bilge, especially at the transom. So it's not a hard chine, it's a rounded chine. That's what I have on the picture of Koala.
Yes,
Okay.
that's
Yes.
pretty close.
That's right.
So I have a stern angled photo, and I use that because, as I was explaining earlier, the brochure drawings are usually a profile and a plan view. It gives you no idea of the shape of the sections, but that photograph from a stern quarter showed that very hard, very boxy section with a rounded chine. So yes, that went into the boat model.
And of course, the keel, as I understand, performance of keels, we don't have that much information for the easy system, right? Like whether it's a kind of block or whether it's shaped correctly or.
Well, I don't know the thickness of it either.
I gotcha.
I know what the profile view looks like, and having designed a number of boats, I know if it's a full-length keel, its thickness as a percent is going to be low. It might be a 6% of thickness to chord length. A modern racing boat might be 18%. It's a very short keel with some good thickness in order to support the bulb or to
Correct,
keep
yeah.
it. So they tend to be 16 to 18%. 12% for that Peterson type keel from the early 80s and so on is probably a reasonable number. Full length keels on an old S&S design are probably like 6%, 7%. So it's just a matter of common sense and also getting the volume about right, because a full length keel is going to have a lot of volume in it. So there is some judgment going in here, and because there's judgment going in, there's room for error.
Understood. So the scanning of the boat does help. It's expensive. Does that solve all the keel issues?
Scanning,
Yeah,
sure.
yes,
I
right?
For our purposes, yes.
Gotcha.
I mean, there are some keel shapes, the section shapes are a little bit better than others, but I think at the level of what we're talking about, it doesn't really matter that much. Not the modern boats will design foil sections that have very low drag shapes. And then they have to polish those keels all the time in order to get that low friction drag, which comes from having the low minimum drag shape. These things only came into existence in our world really in the mid 1990s as a practical sense. So most boats have something like a NACA section. NACA was the forerunner of NASA, the National Aeronautics, whatever administration. So they did a lot of testing, and those kinds of sections were typical. They were really high performance sections. So designers were using NACA sections 00 or 65, 63, 4, 5, and 6. I don't know this. I know this doesn't mean anything to you, but it was typical for designers to use standard foil shapes back then. And during the 1990s, some smart people started developing section shapes that would actually have less friction drag than the ones that the NACA had been using and the designers had been using. I don't think that really applies to what we're talking about, though. That's just really at the
Right,
bottom.
on today's conversation, correct.
We're really looking at wetted area, period. It's the wetted
Right.
area that's the source of the drag.
Gotcha.
What
So
else,
if
guys?
if we can get a better model of the easterly, and I don't really know how much the boat weighs.
Well, that's,
wow.
like I said, I think there were differences. There's perceived, I just know it's out there. There's perceived differences between sister ships. Whether it was actually weighed or not, maybe sometime. Finding OIR certificates would be helpful.
Like, that would solve everything or solve a lot of it.
Well, if we can talk about weighing, we would use a scale weight if it was a good scale, and I'll explain that in a second, for ORREZ. So what does it mean? It has to be a calibrated scale that's been recently calibrated and calibrated within the range of the weight of that boat. So if it goes up to 50,000 pounds and it was calibrated at 25,000 and you're lifting a 5,000 pound boat, you can expect to have more error than if they had calibrated it over a range of weights, 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. It needs to be a single point lift. So that means straps underneath the boat. Not very many boats have an attachment point at the top of the keel, but if you do, that's fine. It's got to be a single point going up, then to the scale, and then to the crane or whatever. So it's got to be calibrated and a single point lift. Travel lifts are not acceptable at all. even if they're calibrated. The problem is that unless the straps are totally vertical, there's going to be extra tension in the straps. And typically the straps are at an angle like this. So we're only interested in the vertical tension, not, there's some horizontal tension that goes into the straps when they're not vertical, which makes the boat appear heavier than it actually is.
Interesting.
If you had to lift with a frame and straps, could you weigh your rigging?
You have
before
to, yes.
and after?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So you could put
And-
it up. You
And
could get it away from the single point lift.
well, the straps are going to have a single point lift. The scale itself needs to attach to a single point.
Right. Okay.
So typically, yes, what there is a metal frame with straps, and the top of the frame converges to a single point, and then that attaches to the scale.
Right. So you could weigh that frame in beforehand.
And you either weigh it dry or wet. You're probably going to want to weigh it wet because
Yeah.
when it's lifting the boat, it's going to be
Right.
wet.
Right.
I hadn't, I'll be honest with you, Jim, I never thought about the angles of the straps affecting the weight. That's, and I see why.
I have a trigonometry class for you.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Well, what
Well,
you
if you
can
could-
do is I want you to get a strap, and you and Bob can go find one of your grandchildren and stand 4 feet apart with the strap going under. She's sitting on it, and feel the weight. And then I want you to each go out 10 feet away, still holding her off the ground, and see how much weight there is in those straps.
A lot more, yeah. Buddy, yeah.
Well,
Okay.
maybe you can find that certificate bins that would help out,
Yeah.
you know.
But I
Or the
think that I-
drawings, or both.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think this has been good because
Yep.
I think
I
there was a lot of
appreciate it.
confusion
Yeah.
about who could influence things and who measured things, and I think we all have a much better feel. So I appreciate it.
Well,
Yeah.
Thank you,
obviously,
Bob.
we appreciate it too, because we have to work with you. We have to make it work for you.
Look at Dave. Dave's living his best life.
Is that a video?
You know,
Is
he's live on a boat. That's
That's
good.
live?
Yeah. Nice. So, Jim,
I'll show you a
if-
picture of
if-
snow live. Go
If
ahead.
you could, if I don't know how you can make the videos, the videos available, maybe through Merlin or Dave, the ones you mentioned earlier about your lectures.
They're not videos, but
Okay,
they are PowerPoint presentations.
that would be
Yeah.
great.
I was gonna send a whole
Jim,
bunch
if
of
you
them to
Jim, if you
Kat.
send them to me, I'll send them out to everybody.
Thanks, Bob. As I could even, kind of like, facilitate those getting out to the different clubs.
I promised I'd send them all to Kat as well, so
Okay, good.
what I'll do is, when this call ends, I'll just go ahead and do that.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
Well, I've
really
got to hop
appreciate
off.
it.
Yeah,
if
thank
you-
you very, very much.
If you want to have a video, we can just do this all over again, and I will use my screen as the host, and we'll talk through the whole Build-A-Boat process with images.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
I could, we could kind of gauge some interest because I'd certainly be interested myself in hearing it. This is eye-opening. I feel thankful for being here, and want to thank you, Bob, for making it happen, Dave for making it happen, Jim for doing it, obviously. So it was great.
Yeah.
If we
it was
do a
great.
video, I have one request though.
Sure.
Can you get Morgan Freeman to do the voiceover?
Yeah.
We can make that happen.
Great.
AI, you can have anything happen now, right?
Doing
Right.
We can actually, I can change you out to be Morgan Freeman.
Well, there you
AI.
go.
So, yeah.
So I'm going to the office today. I'm gonna look and, as a hoarder, we have a lot of old files
You got a lot of stuff in that office, Benz.
from the 70s. We got, and I may just have a Iowa certificate, and I just may have the line drawings.
You're a wizard.
But
I think I can
So,
find
Jim,
out.
I'll get in touch with you, Jim, and
Okay.
whatever data I have, I'll send to you.
I know if I know the certificate number, I can find it in our archives. If I have a sale number, I might be able to find it in the archives. I have to take a look. I haven't looked at the IOR archives in a while. I need to refresh my memory on what church capabilities there are.
Back in
But
the
also-
day, there were about 8 of them racing on
Okay.
the Iowa here.
Okay, that's
And
interesting.
US Sailing probably issued the certificates.
Mhm.
Well, we could, I mean, if there's an archive of Iowa certificates, it's probably there.
All
Well,
right.
there is an archive. I can't guarantee it though.
Super. Well, thanks, Jim. And
Yeah.
I'm sure
Thank
we'll all
you.
get together and talk some more. And that'd be great if we get you to do
Okay.
another video sometime. And I think that'd be really helpful. We could really share it amongst the bigger group.
Yeah.
Well, that
Thanks
would be
a lot.
great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very
Thanks,
much.
guys.
I'll be in touch, Jim. Thanks.
Okay. Excellent.
All right.
My pleasure, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Better than shoveling snow.